Happy Friday, everyone. On today's show, we discussed Jake Oettinger's signing in Dallas, an extension for Tage Thompson, and a cap clearing trade between the Ducks and the Wild. Then we get into the Locked On NHL Team Jersey rankings, as well as an update on Women's Worlds. All that and more on today's Locked On NHL.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of Locked On NHL. I'm Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always every Friday with Gil Martin of Locked On Islanders. You can find him on Twitter at IceWarsNYR, Gil, how are we doing this pre-Labor Day weekend?
Yeah, can't believe it's September already. Training camp's just a few weeks away now. I'm excited for the season. And can't believe Labor Day already. The summer flew by in a blink.
It really did. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Plus, you can watch us over on YouTube. So subscribe over there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we had a few transactions take place this week. It feels like free agency and summer activities never really ended this year. That it got a little quieter, but not too much. A big deal for the Dallas Stars with Jake Oettinger signing a 3-year extension with the team. He really kind of took that team on his shoulders this past season. And, he started out as maybe the third string goalie amongst many goaltenders in Dallas over the past couple of years. And he really earned that top spot on the team. He was 30, 15, and 1 with a .914 save percentage. But I think kind of what cemented it for him was that 64 save game 7 performance. Even though they lost to the Flames in that series in the playoffs, it really just kind of said, oh yeah, this is his team now.
Yeah, he stepped up and had a great game when they needed it most, kept them in a game they really didn't have a lot of business being so close in, and they almost pulled off the upset. And, when you have a young goalie who proves that he's not intimidated by the big game setting on the road, game 7, playoff series, that's a great reason to lock him up and say, we can win with this guy. We can go far. And, he was a restricted free agent. It's sort of a bridge deal, 3 years, $12 million. I think it's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's exactly where you want to be with your bridge deal for young goaltenders in terms of how much you want to spend. And, while he did have a really solid season this past year, you don't really have a long-term record of his to draw on in order to, demand any higher of a salary for him. So, yeah, I think we're spot on with him. One case where I'm not sure we're spot on yet, but maybe you can convince me otherwise, that Tage Thompson got extended in Buffalo, and he actually still has one more year left on his current deal, which was a 3-year contract at $1.4 million. And so he did have a tremendous season this past year, but we don't, again, have a long-term record to draw on. This is just basing it on, what you think he might do in projections, which, to be fair, he had an absolutely phenomenal season, 68 points, 38 goals, 30 assists. And I think the Sabres are making a huge bet on Thompson.
They are. And, I guess a team like Buffalo, they're saying, we want to build around this guy and we don't want to lose him. 38 goals, not with, a heck of a lot of talented offensive players around him. He's only 24. He probably, could get even better. Just entering his prime. You've now locked him up for his prime. And I guess it's a little bit of a gamble, but it's also a statement by the Buffalo Sabres organization that here is one of the centerpieces of our program where we're trying to build around. And if, to have lost him would have been devastating, I think, to the fans and to the organization.
Yeah, I agree with you. And where I worry is that they have a lot of young talent right now and other players coming up the pipeline. And so to commit that much money, 7.14 on the cap for 7 years, when you just had like a couple of really good drafts and, some real potential there, is like, have you locked up too much money for too long? And are you going to get stuck having to deal some of that talent in order to fit everybody that you want in, right?
I think that's a legitimate concern. I think the Sabres are kind of banking on the cap continuing to go up, no more disruptions like we've seen the last few seasons. And yeah, they're taking like I said, a bit of a gamble, but I guess part of it is also in defense of the Sabres, all that young talent, they're probably not all going to pan out. And then you pick the ones who pan out, keep them, let some of the other ones go. And, they're kind of betting on themselves to a point. But yeah, like you said, there is risk involved. I like Tage Thompson. It's just a question of, one really good year. Is that worth the money they gave him? We're going to find out.
Yeah, and I do think that the Sabres are going to take a step forward this season. I think that, and I feel like we say this every year, I feel like the Sabres and the Devils are in the similar position where we feel like on paper they've taken at least a small step forward, but at the same time, you're not sure because everything looks good on paper. Like with Tage Thompson, is he going to deliver? Is the big question. And I think that he very well may. He may have a little bumpy sophomore slump, but I think that the next couple of years are going to be really important for him to solidify his role on that team, like you said. So we shall see how that one pans out, but certainly thinking good thoughts for him and Sabres fans, because I know a lot of them are very excited about him. One smaller deal I want to talk about is Dmitry Kulikov getting traded to the Ducks from the Wild. And it was one of those cap clearing deals, so there was no return. But the Wild didn't have to pay to clear that cap space. The Ducks took Kulikov, which I thought was interesting for a couple of reasons. One, I think teams have been expecting to get sweeteners in these deals in order to relieve teams like the Wild, who frankly were in a little bit of a cap crunch and needed to make the space. But it's interesting that the Ducks were willing to take it on without even just one low draft pick as a sweetener.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise, and this future considerations guy is getting a lot of attention around the league. But, yeah, I mean, it is a salary dump. It's not a big salary. See, the thing is what is it, $2.5 million? Maybe even
Mhm.
$2.25 million a year. So we're not talking about a huge salary dump, and I think maybe that's why there was no sweetener in there. If this was a $4, $5, $6 million contract, we'd see that little extra something included in the deal. But look, you got a veteran defenseman who was a plus 23 last year. He'll certainly give the Ducks, some steadiness on the blue line, some experience on a young team, and the Wild get their cap relief. So, and then whatever future considerations may be. But overall, I guess this deal makes sense for both teams, but yeah, a sweetener is usually expected when you have a cap dump.
Yeah, it's strange times we live in where players get traded for nothing, but
Yeah.
um, or you have to pay to trade a player. But yeah, that's what happens in the cap era, and especially when we've had this flap cap. I'm very curious to see how this starts changing when the cap goes up next year and beyond. But yeah, so we still are making deals in the end of August and beginning of September as we get a little further ahead toward training camps. One thing that we have been talking about semi regularly for the last few weeks on the show is team uniforms and our thoughts on them and manufacturers and designs and all of that. And the entire Locked On NHL host crew put in their votes for their top and worst jerseys. So we're going to get to that next. But first, betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can find league reviews and news on every league, including Major League Baseball, and everything you need to know leading up to the NFL season and the NBA season, and of course, the NHL. They even cover combat sports, esports, and golf too. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to scores, podcasts, and more. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events. So head to the BetOnline website today or use your mobile device. You can learn all about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Gil. So over the last couple of days, via the Locked On main Twitter account at Locked On Network, we learned that our NHL hosts, our fellow people around Locked On NHL, we'd all voted on our favorite jerseys around the league and ranked them. And we got some really interesting results here, Gil. I,
Interesting
for
is a good
one,
word.
yeah, so let's starting at the top. The Calgary Flames were in the number one position, which why? I do not understand. Explain this to me, please, Gil.
Well, you're asking the wrong person. I mean, the Flames jerseys to me are fine. They're nice enough, but would I put them anywhere near number one? No. I mean, look, I like red and gold. It's a good color combination. I always like the fact that their alternate captains have the A that looks like the old Atlanta Flames logo, which is a nice little nod to the team's history. But I wouldn't put them in my top five, let alone at number one.
No, yeah, they're like kind of maybe a 10 to 15 range
Yeah, like
for
above
me.
average, but not outstanding.
Yeah, and especially because the design of it comes from when they were the Atlanta Flames, and that actually has some significance to Atlanta in a way that maybe it doesn't in Calgary. And so just changing the A to a C and then it's still the bright red. I don't know. I don't get it. But what I do understand is the team in the number two slot, which is the Arizona Coyotes, and with the Kachina jerseys, of course, those are absolutely spectacular. Cannot argue.
Ah, I might
Or
argue with
can
that.
you?
I can. Look, again, I wouldn't put the Coyotes that high up. I think they're certainly an improvement over the previous uniforms, but number two, I mean, wow, that's a little higher than I would put them. I might put them, somewhere between 8 and 12, but not two. But
Interesting.
but you know what? The Coyotes should be near the top at something. So let's give
Okay.
them a little. I don't want to take away credit from a team that doesn't get enough credit for much of anything. So,
All right.
like I said, I like these jerseys certainly better than their previous ones, but I wouldn't put them in number two myself.
Yeah. The team at number 3 is one of my favorites, so I'm not complaining about it being in the top 5. That's the Detroit Red Wings. It's just classic.
Totally.
Absolutely classic, clean, and, I as a general rule, like jerseys that go outside the red, white, blue color scheme. But this is a rare exception to that rule for me because I just think it looks so sharp and it is obviously, original six, classic. You cannot go wrong with the Red Wings. New kids on the block, Seattle Kraken were at number 4. I think that's the shiny new object factor here.
Yeah, and a lot of teams when they were new. I mean, I remember the Sharks were number 1 when they first came into the league. Yeah, a lot of new teams get that recognition. They certainly have a unique color scheme. It's different. I like it. It sort of reminds me, and I'm getting real obscure here, maybe the Penguins in the mid to late 70s for a couple of years had a similar color combination. It was like light blue and dark blue. And when I first
Mhm.
saw the Kraken, I was like, good Lord, that looks a lot like those old Penguin jerseys that I think they wore around 76 or 77. But it is original. It's colorful. So I like it.
Yeah, I do as well. The next couple of teams, I'm like, they're fine, but I would not maybe have put them as high, and that's the New York Rangers and Minnesota Wild. Like, I just don't understand how the Minnesota Wild get in the top 10. But I mean, I suppose, it's green, so it's not red and blue. But
Right. You got that different
I
color
just,
thing. Now don't forget Buffalo. Buffalo was 5.
oh, right.
So the Sabres, and I'm assuming this is going back to their primary jerseys, which
Hmm.
date back to 1971, kind of classic. They're bringing back the red, black, and white buffalo head as their alternate jerseys, so that'll be interesting. But I always liked Buffalo, but the colors, I don't know, they're not as flashy. They're kind of that blue and gold is a little dull. It's nice. I wouldn't put it quite as high as 5, but I like it.
Yeah, and, rounding out the top 10 here are some interesting ones. The San Jose Sharks at number 8, which I love.
I
Again,
do too.
teal outside the bound like, when these jerseys were first announced, when the Sharks entered the league, I love them, absolutely love them. Love that they went with the teal, and I think that they are absolutely top 10 in the league.
I agree. I would have them higher than 8th, but I love the Sharks. As far as the colors go, it was different. It's unique, and it has a nice contrast, and it pops. I like the jerseys. Always have.
Yeah, me too. And then the Boston Bruins at number 9. Not a fan of the team, but absolutely a fan of these jerseys. Again, I just think there's something about that spoke that is just really a solid design, and you can't go wrong with it. And black and gold is a really good color combination, much to my chagrin, but it really is. It looks good, and it always just again, when the Bruins come out for warm-ups, love seeing those jerseys.
And speaking of black and gold, 10th is held down by the Pittsburgh Penguins, who kind of copied the Bruins color scheme, although obviously with the Pirates and the Steelers, they were changing from the blue and white to the black and gold to stay with the other teams in that city. It made sense at the time, but boy, it did look a lot like the Bruins color scheme and setup. Hard to separate them. I like the fact that the Bruins are higher. They're the original, but it works.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that again, it just looks sharp, and I like the font they use on their jerseys as
Yes.
well. I think it looks really good. It's a little narrow, I think, but I really, really like it. So you got no argument from me there. I do think there are a couple of teams missing from this top 10, that at least one that I maybe wouldn't have picked myself, but am surprised is not there, and that's the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Two teams that I'm surprised aren't there, the Maple Leafs being one, and the Canadiens, which is, again, two of the more classic, eternal kind of jerseys.
Mhm.
And to see neither of them in the top 10 was a little bit of a surprise to me. Glad they're not in the bottom 10. That would have been kind of almost like an affront to the hockey gods. But yeah, it's kind of surprised that neither one of those two classic jerseys made the top 10.
Yeah, and just for me personally, I absolutely adore the St. Louis Blues jersey design. That is a top 5 jersey for me. I love that note. I just think it looks super cool. I love it, especially when they have the brighter blue
Yes.
in the jerseys. But yeah, I absolutely love the St. Louis Blues jerseys.
I like the Blues jerseys also. It is a second six team classic, and the note is such a great original way to talk about the St. Louis Blues. So I always like those uniforms.
All right. Well, you hinted at the top or bottom 10 jerseys, I should say, and we will get to those coming up next. But first, an important message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that could happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, your reaction times slow way down when you're high, and you not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI.
All right, Gil, getting to the bottom 10 jerseys here. First off, at 23 is your New York Islanders.
Yeah, and look, the Islanders jersey doesn't get a lot of love around the league. I always liked it. You got the Nassau County official colors scheme there in the blue and the orange, matches, the Mets and the Knicks in the New York metropolitan area. Uh, and the logo is kind of clever, integrating the map of Long Island with the hockey stick, but it just doesn't get a lot of love, and maybe it is kind of old fashioned, dating back to its origins in 1972. I would put it higher than this, but here it is. So what could I tell you?
Yeah, I think it just for me, and this is my problem honestly with the Oilers too, is I just don't like blue and orange. I think
Mm-hmm.
like if you use orange, like I prefer it with black. I wonder why, but um, yeah, I just think that it's the color combo that makes me not want to buy it for me. And obviously, being from Philadelphia, I'd have no love lost for the Knicks or the Mets either. So um, that does not support the cause. All right. Another one that was a bit of a surprise to me in the number 24 spot is the Dallas Stars. Because again, love the green, love the star. I love what they did when they moved from Minnesota to Dallas. Didn't love the move at the time, but I thought
Agreed.
they did a really good job of like translating the brand when they did make the move.
I agree, and I like green as well. So to me, I would put the Stars higher. But and those third jerseys are certainly unique. The glow in the dark look, the fluorescent third jerseys. But for whatever reason, green doesn't get a lot of love when it comes to sports jerseys these days. Um, to me, this jersey is too low. I agree with you.
Yeah. We've got the Devils at 25. That's fine for me. I just think it's kind of plain and they don't really do much interesting except for in third jerseys, which isn't part of this survey. So
Right.
I'm fine with that there. I'm a little surprised the Vegas Golden Knights are at 26. I think a lot of people really love the jerseys with the shield and having sparkly gold on it as well. So that was a little surprise to me.
Yeah, and you got to include those sparkly helmets too that they sometimes wear. Those are certainly unique. But yeah, not a lot of love for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, and at 27, we have the Florida Panthers. Again, I have no problem with this in the bottom. The Panthers have never had a good jersey, in my opinion. I've said that before on this show, and I will say it again. I am sure, unless they change it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they've made some modifications over the years, but it's more or less what it's been. And yeah, I agree with you. It's I might put it a couple of places higher, but it would not be too much higher. So,
All right, this is where I have the biggest problem because
gee, what a shock.
I know Philadelphia Flyers at 28. This is a travesty. A travesty. The Flyers, not only do they follow the no red and blue rule, right? But the logo is classic. The reason why they haven't changed the jersey very much over the years is because it's so nice and so loved that if people, people would riot if they changed it too much. The one year they did with that weird silvery dot in the middle, like that was just no, that went away very quickly because you don't mess with perfection, right? So I think that while I don't think it cracks the top 5 in the league overall, I think anywhere from like 6 to 12 is probably about right for the Flyers.
It's way too low. This is a classic jersey. It's a second six team. It's such an important part of the history of the sport over the last 55 years, give or take. To me, it certainly is way too low on this list.
Yeah. Yep. Probably the most controversial ranking of this survey at 29 is the Chicago Blackhawks. And, there are some people that say the Blackhawks jersey is the best in all of sports, not just in the NHL. And I really think that this ranking amongst our hosts has to do with the fact that, there's been a movement over the last number of years to try and get the Blackhawks to change their jersey and to not depict Native American imagery like this anymore. And that's really what's reflected here. It's that I think everybody understands that it is a classic jersey. It's original six. It's, been around for a long time. It has multiple highlight colors, which is unique. And, I think there's a lot to it, but I think it's really just the continued situation with, demands to maybe change it because of the Native American imagery.
Yeah, I mean, if you judge it solely on the way it looks, color-wise, and all of that, I would say it should be probably on the first list that we went over rather
Mhm.
than the second, but there is that controversy, and it's reflected in the vote on this list.
The bottom 3 are the Caps, Ducks, and Blue Jackets. I got no bones with that, honestly. None of them are extremely interesting. If the Ducks went back to the Mighty Ducks logo in the eggplant version, they would move way up the charts. But as it currently stands, doesn't work for me.
Yeah, no, not going to argue too much about the bottom 3. It's I mean, I like the Blue Jackets jerseys to a point. I like the white ones better than the blue ones, but not gonna not gonna argue with its placement. No.
Not at all. All right, let us know what you think about the jersey rankings, and we'll put a link to the tweets with the graphics showing those rankings in the show notes so that you can study it for yourself. Wrapping up today's show, just a quick note on Women's Worlds. We have the semifinals starting on Saturday. We have USA, who won their quarterfinal over Hungary 12-1, versus Czechia, who upset Finland in dramatic fashion. That was a heck of a game. And then the second semifinal will be Canada, who won their game against Sweden 3-0. And then they'll be facing Switzerland. So those are your 2 semi-final matchups this weekend. Big point. Hilary Knight had a goal and an assist in the quarterfinal match. She is now the all-time record holder for points at Women's World. She passed Haley Wickenheiser, who is an absolute legend. Hilary Knight, she's the GOAT herself too. So future Hall of Famer there, and excited to see how this one turns out.
Yeah, congratulations to her on a great accomplishment, and I'm looking forward to seeing what plays out. And look, USA Canada in women's hockey, such a great rivalry, and I'm hoping that that's what we see in the final.
Absolutely. All right, that will do it for today's show. Gil, of course, will be back Monday with a show checking in on all the NHL teams with hosts from around the league. We'll both be back next Friday to recap the week that was. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam, Gil's on Twitter at IceWarsNYR, You made us your first listen today. Now for your second listen, check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey NFL insiders all came together into one ultimate NFL preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everybody.